Yes. All right. So on to the last the last segment for our show tonight, and that is the review of 500 Days of Summer. Um, all right. For those of you who don't know, a quick little synopsis: 500 Days of Summer follows a man named Thomas who falls in love with this girl named Summer, and the movie is about their tumultuous relationship. Um, and again, if you're not a fan of non-linear storytelling, then this isn't the movie for you. But they kind of jump around to different periods within their relationship to show to do like a compare contrast sort of thing. Um, and
Kept switching back and forth between time.
right. Again, non-linear storytelling. Um, because even in the beginning is actually the end. Um, so there's a compare and contrast kind of element, and you see the kind of collapse of Thomas um, towards the end of the movie, but ultimately I think it was for the best for him in terms of growth, because Thomas was an aspiring architect who's working at a greeting cards company, kind of doing that thing that most people do when they get out of school and just take the first job that they're able to get to pay for to pay to live and pay off student loans, and then they eventually just kind of get comfortable and just kind of languish at the first job that they were able to get out of school. And so I think uh, you know I think that Thomas does go through significant growth, even though it happens towards the end and after his year with Summer, or kind of within the year that he is still uh, associated with Summer.
It's like a year and a half, and it's like based off of the time frame, they probably dated for about a year, but like as far as their connection together, it was about 500 days.
Right. I mean, hence the title 500 Days of Summer, which definitely puts it over a year. And so, okay, so we'll start with you, Robert. Your thoughts?
Oh God. uh, I will say, like, this is one of those movies where I love and hate it at the same time.
Right.
Because it's even to this day, because I watched this when it first came out, and this is about 10 years ago now.
Almost, yeah.
And yeah, and it just, God, it just kicks me like right in the gut, just like it did back then. But at the same time, it's a good movie because it does create that feeling in me still, which I think is what was the point of the whole film. Because uh, I don't know if the caption that starts off at the very beginning before the movie starts. I don't know if that was from the director or from the writer or whoever created that film, but like, yeah, you could tell like um, that was what he was trying to convey in the film. Is he was trying to work through his own crappy relationship that really hurt, um, and in one sense, like going through it a second time and looking at it in a critical way. uh, One thing that Summer always said, that she wasn't necessarily looking for something serious, and she said all these things, But the way that she acted and interacted with Tom conveyed something different. And I think Tom went into it thinking like, okay, yeah, we'll go into it and we'll see what happens, which is not necessarily what he wanted, but he really liked Summer. So he goes along with it, and they clearly, like, obviously him more so than Summer, clearly develop feelings for each other, where Summer even begins to start sharing intimate details about her life that you would think like, okay, now we've become something more than just friends, obviously. And you spend all that time together with somebody, and eventually you do get close to them. um and the fact that I don't think Summer was very, the thing that sucks about her is because when it kind of, and in her mind it ended, but she kind of just uh, was kind of brutal about it. And pretty much like immediately after the relationship ended, she quote unquote met somebody else, and then she's like, oh well, now I fell in love, which is kind of a to me it's kind of a, hey, a fuck you to Tom, who had put all this work into the relationship, and yet everything that he did is like, so obviously I wasn't good enough, but this, Joe Schmo who just shows up out of the blue, all of a sudden he's the one that like you care about. And how much do you even know about this person? And I trust me, this movie bugs me. I hate it so much because I've gone through that very same thing where you spend all this time with a person, and yeah, there's any relationship's going to have its rocky moments, but usually you think that you have stuff going on with like this particular person, and you think things are going well, and then they just, I don't know, it's bullshit. I hate it so much. I just obviously, like, going through what I just went through with my ex-girlfriend, it just, yeah, it brought me right back to that. And the funny thing is, because I actually just watched this today, or because I was off today, so I watched this morning, and lo and behold, right after I finished watching this film, guess who decides that they want to text me out of the blue? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, just to dig the knife a little bit deeper.
Hmm.
And it was about 10 in the morning, and I was like, you know what? I need a beer. I ended up having a drink. I was like, this. Uh,
Yeah, I know, Robert. I know you've been hurt. I know you've been hurt. Um,
like, the thing is, I'm in a good place now,
right.
and I feel like I'm, unlike Tom. I've never been the one that thinks, oh, there's the one that you're meant to be with. I don't necessarily believe that. Because based off my faith, you read biblically, God has only chosen a bride or a spouse on a handful of occasions. I can think of only like two or three right off the top of my head that have been spouses chosen by God. The rest of the time, it's kind of more of left up to us because we do have free will. Now, when you look back and how the relationship developed, yeah, sure, God is definitely involved, but he's not forcing our hand and like, oh, well, so and so is supposed to be with this person, and if it doesn't happen, then it's not going to happen. I think that's so unlike Tom, I've never been that guy, and just so I do, like my situation I'm in now, like I do feel like God has kind of orchestrated things to put me in the relationship that I'm in now. But the past relationship, it was kind of the same thing where we were kind of going in the same direction, but we had very different ways of viewing the world, or like how we wanted to get to those destinations.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just kind of it's like, this is a good movie, but fuck this movie.
No, I get it. I totally get it because well, I've never.
I hope
I've,
no one ever has to go through this with someone.
right. I guess I've never personally gone through anything quite like this. I will admit, mine is a little bit more on the unrequited side of love. Um, well, so
You're
I
like,
guess
yeah,
in
you're
that
like
way,
my friend Paul.
I could relate to Tom in that way that because the feelings that he had for Summer weren't reciprocated by Summer, so in that way I can relate or I can empathize. But I mean, watching this again, I found myself not as sympathetic to Tom.
Tom was
Uh,
kind of a wimp, to be honest.
right, and he just wasn't. He was so kind of entranced by like Summer's like physical charms that I think he just wasn't paying attention enough. She basically spelled out everything that she was about in the first like few interactions that they had. She said
Right.
that she was bored, which she when asked like, oh, well, what are you doing here? It's like, well, I got bored with the last place I was at, which kind of indicates like a flighty nature. And then
Which I hate. Yeah. I
what was that?
No, I was saying it's like, yeah, I know that type of girl quite well.
Right. I mean, I think every guy can say that they've known a girl like that. But then, so she lets Tom knows exactly what she's about. She's kind of like this flighty kind of person, and she's not looking. And she says, "I'm not looking for anything serious. I just want casual." And she's not one who believes in love because of her own experiences, of her parents' marriage dissolving, which then left a scar. But Tom was he was like one of those Captain Save-A-Hos, and it's like, oh well, I'll be different. I'll be the one to change her mind, or I'll be the one that she falls in love with because I love her so much that she'll feel it, and then she'll then reciprocate my love, which as anyone can tell you, that's rarely how it ends up shaking down.
No. See, that's where I do agree with you that she was she up front she was very like clear about like her intentions. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously like she liked being around. Um, so there was that, and yeah, Tom is definitely a wimp.
Mm-hmm.
With his stupid sweater vest.
Did you wear sweater
He,
vest back in the day?
like in 8th grade,
Okay.
and I did that like once
Okay. Okay. All right.
because I was a fan of Doug. That's why I wore like a sweater
Oh.
vest back in the
Okay.
day. But
All
anyways,
right.
um, no, with the case of this, the reason why I have such a reaction to it is because as time goes on, okay, like I'm with this person, like going a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and obviously, yeah, there is a physical relationship, to um going on, but there is like more of an emotional connection going on between them, where the like I was saying, she was sharing more than like you would just share with a friend. As far as like there was an intimacy that was being developed between them that was not of Tom's doing. Summer was the one that was initiating that. And then to say like and then like towards the end of the relationship where she I think in a sense she became scared that she was getting closer to Tom, and she didn't want that, so she was like, oh well, Tom, I just told you I wanted to be friends. Like, it's like screw you and we're just friends. Like, we're not friends. Yeah, and Tom has that after he gets punched out at the bar, where it's like it's like screw you and you're just friends. We're not just friends. Um, and I've been there because the last relationship I was in, it was as things were we were progressing more and more towards where I think we both wanted to go. It's like, well, you're not, we're not really dating. We're just friends. Like, and it's like, screw you, and you're just friends. We're not just friends. I would not do the things that I'm doing for just a friend. Sorry, like even like someone like you or Daniel, like if they ask, if like maybe like once I would do that for you guys, but not like on a consistent basis. It's like, I'm not gonna
Bro, don't make it.
bend over
Stop making it
backwards.
weird.
Yeah, but I'm just
Stop making
saying
it
like,
weird.
but you guys are my friends. Like I wouldn't do that stuff for you guys, and so it's like, yeah, I'm not just your
Or
friend.
with us.
Yeah, and it's like and so that's why like I kind of feel that reaction towards this movie, because she was um yes, well, she was clear about her feelings up front. Her actions and throughout the relationship changed. So it was, and so even though what she said she wanted, she wasn't doing those things. And I can see where someone like Tom started to see that and started to kind of like, okay, well, it's no longer just a casual thing. Obviously, like it's progressing to a different level. And but then when Summer kind of shatters that whole thing, it's like, what? Yeah, why did I waste my time?
Right. Okay. Uh,
But yeah, but I do agree with you in a way too, where yeah, Summer was upfront with her what she wanted, and Tom's kind of a wimp.
right. And yeah, and yeah, because that kind of weeniness that he had about him was, very off-putting, and I could then see why, you know, Summer doesn't, kind of falls out of, I don't know, affection that she was starting to have for him, because like he tried to initiate the conversation, and we all know what the conversation is, to define the relationship, and
Yeah,
he she and then and then she convinces him that why mess up a good thing, why do we need labels and things like that, and he just kind of cucks out. It's like, yeah, you're right, yeah, this is fine, everything's fine, but it's like, if you don't name the thing, you don't get to have it. I think
true.
it's one of those ancient kind of truths, um, that we all know, but for some reason, like there's it's kind of like this postmodern take on relationship. It's like, oh well, why do we have to have labels, and why do we have to define things? Why can't we just why can't it be what it is? And it's like, well, we don't even know what it is because we're not naming it, we're not labeling it. uh,
it's a rudderless ship. It has no direction,
well,
so
yeah,
you're
well,
just
like
kind
the
of
thing,
going.
how can you say, a thing isn't a thing unless you know what it is? I mean, if it's kind of like trying to, kind of like kind of like uh, in a more humorous way, it's kind of like the Miss Swan bit, where it's like it looked like a man. It's like, well, okay, but you need to give me more specifics. But was that okay? It's like, yeah, but he looked like a man. It's like that's not being helpful. That's not being specific. That's not that's not nailing it down. And
it's
and
it's for in a relationship wise, it's the spiritual, not religious type of relationship where it's like you haven't defined anything. You've said all these things, but really said nothing.
precisely. And so you know, so yeah, if you can't call it a relationship, then you don't have a relationship.
Right.
And I think that's something that uh, even though this movie was made so many years ago, I think it's still relevant to today's time when people are saying like, oh, let's keep it loose, let's keep it casual, let's not get messy and define things. But that's ultimately where you're supposed to be going toward. That's what like this dating or this courtship, these courtship rituals are supposed to lead to, is to get to the mess.
Yeah, like initially, like let's say in a relationship, if it's like, hey, I'm not sure where this is gonna go, but let's keep talking, let's hang out, let's see if it does go in a direction, and we'll revisit the idea in a few months after we've kind of gotten to know each other if we really want to be together. I think that's fine. Um, but like where Summer wanted to be in this perpetual state of just you know I mean, you look at her apartment too. Like all her stuff is still packed. I mean,
Right,
even
there
though
were
she's
still
been in the city
boxes,
for
and
several months.
yeah, there were still boxes, there were no pictures of family or loved ones. Really, I mean, there were like few trinkets and like artifacts from her youth or whatever, like kind of like the origami swans, which
Right.
they show like in a when those old 8 millimeter type videos of her are footage of her making. So you can obviously kind of link those. Oh, that this is something from her childhood that she really loves. But yeah, there's no pictures. There's no life. There are things, but there are no like people. And
Right.
so yeah, but again, there is some hope because Tom eventually finds his balls, and he does what every man has to do, and go out and and make things happen for himself. And I think
Yeah.
that's when things turn around for him, is when he quits his job, because he realizes that he's just there because of comfort, or maybe even like some like morbid sense that like this like the only way to still be kind of connected with Summer. But he then quits in spectacular fashion, and kind of in a Jordan Peterson esque fashion. He cleans his room.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and better still, and better still, he in his room he has this giant wall that's like kind of like a chalkboard, and he starts drawing. He starts because he's an architect, so he starts drawing like the cityscape. And I think it's more and it's more important than just as a signifier of his change, but he's like literally mapping out like what he wants for his life, or or at least the things that he wants to get done in his life. And and again, something that every guy, every man should do, is
Definitely.
set goals, even write them down, or in Tom's case, he literally draws himself a map,
Mm-hmm.
and then he starts going for it. He starts improving, he starts reading books. There's a kind of like a scene, there's a kind of like a quick little montage of him, reading architecture books, and then getting his portfolio together, and then going off to interviews and things like that. So which that does tie in back to my theory about why this is a more hopeful movie than Eternal Sunshine. Is because he starts making things happen for himself, and again, okay, spoilers. At the end of the film, he goes to his job interview, and then waiting in the lobby is a very attractive woman, and they begin to talk, and they see that they have all these they have these things in common because they're both applying for the same position at the same firm, but then also the girl recognizes him um, because she had seen him at a park that he says is one of his favorite spots in the city, and so and then and so like they have like this kind of little kind of like they have this good repertoire or what's that word, not repertoire, rapport building.
Repartee.
They just they're starting having like this really good rapport. And then Tom is called into his interview, but before he does, he makes one last effort and asks this girl out. And she at first she's not sure about it, and just as he's about to walk into his interview, she calls out to him, like, yeah, sure. And supposedly, and that's the start of potentially his next relationship. And the reason, and that little scene is what makes me believe that this is more hopeful than Eternal Sunshine, at least in terms of the love story aspect, is because I'm more hopeful that this relationship with this new girl was going to work out for him, is because she chooses him right away, as opposed to
True.
as opposed to Summer, who he kind he reluctantly is outed um, to Summer through another coworker, and it's not until like the next day or a couple of days after that she kind of makes this move on him.
Right.
And so yeah, so meaning like she wasn't too sure whether or not she wanted to, and so it's not until like the next day or a couple of days later that Summer decides, okay, let's give it a shot, as opposed to this new girl who who chooses him right away. And I think that small difference is what makes this movie more of a, or have more of a hopeful ending than Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. This is, well, I didn't think Eternal Sunshine was as hopeless as I initially thought when I first watched it.
Right. I mean, and even
As
though
we
like I don't
as
think it was that hopeful, I would agree that it's more
yeah,
hopeful than what I remembered.
right. But as we discussed in previous episode, but this one definitely is the hopeful movie of this whole month that we watched,
Mm-hmm.
because it does end on a good note.
Right.
Tom's
Right.
kind of turned his life around.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took Summer to burn his life to the ground, but then he didn't just wallow there. You know, he kind of cleaned his room and started from scratch. Started from scratch.
Right. Well, yeah, and like the and what made me not be so hopeful about Eternal Sunshine is like they instead of embracing the pain, you know uh, they went and just had it like kind of like a cleaning service and just had it like wiped from their memories, as opposed to uh, working through that pain, working through that grief, and and bettering themselves. You know bettering themselves, like how Tom does, like having to work on that pain daily, and then and using that kind of pain and anguish to improve himself, so that the next person he's with, he'll be a better man.
Right.
Yeah, as opposed to in Eternal Sunshine, where they're given all, at the end they're given all the documents, saying like what they didn't like about the other person and things like that. So it's like,
All the
so
work was done for them.
right, so they're given all the answers, and so they don't really have to work for it necessarily.
Yeah. So, what would you say as a unless you have any more thoughts, what are your ratings for this movie, and of the movies we've watched this month, which one do you like the best?
Okay. As for the rating, I think I'd give this movie. I think I'd give this movie a three, 3.5. Um.
I'm sorry. Do you have any? I interrupted you. What were you gonna say?
Oh. Well, just I was just gonna say, I think that this movie is, out of the movies that we watched this month, was definitely more hopeful. Um, and I think it's a better message. I mean, definitely more than American Beauty or Wild Things.
God,
Um,
American Beauty, that was a really depressing movie.
yeah, that was man. That's the one that you need to drink after. Um,
I will say that they're going through this month. I definitely changed my opinion on some of the films that we've watched throughout the month. So
what
for
would you say
for
is
actually,
what would you say was the biggest change in opinion? Which movie was the
uh,
biggest change?
I like American Beauty a lot less than when I first watched it. Like a lot less. Like I actually don't think it's a very good movie.
Agreed.
Um, the movie that really surprised me was Wild Things, and how just it was a lot more of an exciting film than I remembered. Just with
Again, I
like you
agree.
say, so that was like the biggest shock to me. It's like, damn, this is a really good movie. Because obviously, like back when it first came out, we were excited for that
For other
infamous pool
reasons. Let's
scene.
just say other
Oh,
reasons.
for other reasons. But now, actually watching it with the critical eye and being much older, it's like, fuck, this is a good movie.
Right, yeah.
Outside of like them kind of ruining a little, kind of taking us behind the curtain and showing at the end of the film everything that had happened.
Mhm.
Uh, that was, to me, that was the only knock on the film. Like, had they not done that, it would have been, I would have given it a higher rating.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
And Eternal Sunshine was not. I found it a little bit more optimistic than you did,
Hmm.
but as we've talked about today, 500 Days of Summer is definitely much more hopeful, and I think a better message than Eternal Sunshine.
Okay.
As
What's
far
your
as
rating?
first, my rating for this one, I'm gonna give it 4 stars actually, just
Okay.
because I think it does invoke kind of like it it kind of gives you the message of what it's going for, of like what it's trying to convey, and then it goes out and actually does it. As far as you
Okay.
definitely feel, it says that right from the beginning, it says this is not a love story. This is and it's more of kind of I don't know if it was the director or the writer that was working through something, but
Hmm.
they definitely worked through it. I think by doing this film, it definitely, even 10 years from when it first came out, it definitely invokes that um, the same response that I had back then. And well, I'm definitely not as depressed after watching it. But man, it does bring back, um, it made me remember like, oh man, all those like really terrible relationship feelings that I hope no one, uh, from our audience or uh, you or anyone else has to go through, because it's not fun.
Right. Yeah.
And I
That's
think it also does show you is like, yeah, it's kind of one, like I said, the one thing that changed about me is like, yeah, Tom is definitely kind of a wimp. Um,
yeah, definitely a
and
wiener.
well, I mean, he listens to the Smiths for God's sakes. That's
Yeah,
that is
the
definitely
people
wiener
who listen to
music.
Smith were like the proto emos.
Yeah, I think that like there's a couple songs from the Smiths that are like, yeah, that's all right. They're all right, but yeah, God, it's the Smiths. Ugh. Well, and Summer likes Ringo Starr, which is another. I agree with Tom. What the hell is your problem?
Yeah. Like nobody likes Ring. It was hilarious because she was saying like, oh, that's why I love him because nobody else does. It's like that's not a good
Listen,
enough reason.
listen. I'm a contrarian as much as anyone, but I'm sorry. Ringo Starr is no. He's definitely not like the best Beatle by.
No.
uh, anyways, but yeah, so I'm gonna give it 4 stars because I think the movie kind of it sets out to it establishes what it meant to establish, and I think the acting was really good.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. I give it a 3.5. Robert gives it a 4. Go check it out for yourselves.